Hey everyone, and welcome to Television from the Multiverse. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we talk about DC TV shows on this, and this is a little bit strange, this is a little bit different than normal. This is normally a weekly podcast in which we talk about the week's DC TV shows, including your Supergirls, your The Flashes, Black Lightnings, all that kind of thing. But for new shows, when they launch a new series and we get a new episode 1, we like to do an individual review that is standalone. This will also be edited into the podcast, the next episode, which will be coming next Friday. But there's going to be episode 1 of season 1 of Doom Patrol, the new show from DC Universe. This is simply called the pilot. We will start spoiler free because it is in episode 1. We'll give you a warning somewhere in the middle before we get to spoilers. But that's what we're going to do. Yeah, we liked the Doom Patrol episode of Titans quite a bit. It was probably the best episode of that season.
Comfortably.
And we were pretty optimistic about this show.
Yeah. So
coming into it, we literally just read the first volume of Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol run for another show this week. So we brushed up in some Doom Patrol knowledge a little bit, although we're definitely not experts by any means.
No, we got the basics.
Got some basics down. And we have this episode, we have a hell of a cast. We got Brendan Fraser as Robot Man, at least the voice of Robot Man, and he appears in some flashbacks. But he's we got Timothy Dalton as the Chief, Niles Calder.
Yeah. You got Matt Bomer as the voice of Larry.
And we get Alan Tudyk as the villain, as Mr. Nobody. So, which is actually how the episode starts. It starts with him narrating and a little bit of like his origin story, before it sort of spills into what I would call the episode as a whole as the origin story. It kind of it neatly gives you some origin stuff for all the main characters, with the exception of Calder himself. He's still sort of kind of mysterious. I'm sure we'll get some backstory on him down the line. But we get some backstory on the rest of the characters, although we definitely focus more on Robot Man, which I think is interesting because one of the things we talked about the first arc of Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol, which was like a relaunch of the series in many ways, is that it kind of used Robot Man as the central figure to kind of draw people into the world. And I think the show also, even though things are different from that book, it does the same sort of technique where it uses him, it uses Cliff as the heart of the show, even though he's not the best person in the world. When we see him as a human, as a human being in the flashbacks, he's not a great guy. Like, he does some shitty things.
Kind of shitty, yeah.
But he clearly cares in some other ways, and it kind of uses him. So we get introduced to him, we get introduced to Crazy Jane, we get introduced to Rita, we get introduced to Negative Man, to Larry. So these are our main 4 over the course of the episode. Notably no Cyborg this episode. I assume he'll be added in later.
Yeah, which is the only thing that I'm not seeing where he fits, because what is Cyborg going to offer different from Robot Man? Like, genuinely, that's what I'm questioning, and I'm sure the show can answer that hopefully next week.
I'm sure there'll be some jokes about it.
Yeah,
that has some similarities.
Yeah, I mean, I was not expecting this show to be as self-aware as it is. So yeah, there might well be some jokes about it.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's some meta jokes, although I think it's notable that the meta jokes only come from one particular character.
Yeah.
And I think that one particular character gets away with this because I feel like the way they're going to treat his powers and his relationship to art and art becoming life, I feel like that's where that's coming from. It's not that, I don't think Robot Man and Crazy Jane are going to start dropping references to things.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
But it leaves it open for the show to actively address it.
Yes. So, yeah, so we get this story that spans decades, sort of explaining the origin of Robot Man and the other characters. And yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of leave it there. We'll talk about the plot more in spoilers when we get to it. So, did you enjoy episode 1 of Doom Patrol?
Oh, a lot. I thought this was pretty fantastic.
I liked it a lot too. I actually, I was really into it. Honestly, my only real complaints, really broad complaints, is that a lot of the effects do look quite cheap, and they stuck out to me.
Yeah. There's one character's effect in particular that feels cheaper than the
rest.
Was
a few moments. There's a couple of explosions that look quite bad. There was a couple of things that just looked a bit rough. And it's funny because there's one character in particular who's very effects heavy that I think looks actually quite good, but I think it's because it's a very abstract effect. It doesn't really matter that it doesn't look photoreal, if that makes sense. Whereas the other stuff, not so hot. But this is the thing, we complained about the effects on Titans as well. Clearly, DC Universe has a fairly low budget for its shows right now. They can't afford...
I think the effects on this are better than some of the ones in Titans.
Mm.
At least, like they're more consistent in this episode than they were across Titans, and Titans definitely had some moments that were far, far worse than anything in this.
Yeah, I feel like it's weird though because this is a show that, at least from this first episode,
It's a lot more reliant on them.
It's going to rely on effects a lot more often. So as much as perhaps they were better overall than Titans, I think because it has to rely on them, it maybe sticks out more. Whereas in Titans, you could go an entire episode without needing an effect. An episode of that, and then it would just be like one scene. There'd be like a quick jolt of, oh, this thing looks quite bad,
and it would look awful. Yeah.
But honestly, though, that's my only real complaint is the effects looking a bit ropey. Because everything else, like stuff I complained about in Titans, like there's some male things that maybe carry over. Like I have no problem with like, these characters being a bit more mature and using F-bombs and stuff. I did think they maybe did it a little bit too often.
they use the F-word so much.
Yeah,
so much. I mean, it feels a lot more tonally consistent and in keeping with what the show is, though, compared to Titans. Where Titans it felt edgy, here it just felt humorous.
The only character that stuck out as being weird for me was Crazy Jane, just based on what I've read of Doom Patrol from Grant Morrison.
Yeah,
I never got the impression that she, like, the base Crazy Jane person, because Crazy Jane, if you don't know, if you're watching this for just the spoiler-free section, Crazy Jane's a character with 64 personalities, and each one has their own superpower. But there's like a base, the Jane personality is the base one, right? That's the most common. I never got the impression in the book that she was this mouthy, or that had this much attitude, I guess.
That's fair.
And it's not so much a complaint, it just stuck out to me as I was watching this that she had a bit of a foul mouth, and I'm like, oh, I didn't expect that. Like Hammerhead, when she becomes Hammerhead personality, sure,
absolutely,
yeah, go for it.
No one's as bad as Cliff though.
Oh, Cliff was dropping them left and right.
I think I said in the Doom Patrol episode of Titans that his F-bomb in that was the most natural that had been in the whole show.
Oh yeah, most of them here are fine as well. Because what's funny actually, there's a quick sex scene early on with a little bit of nudity, and I actually laughed at that just because Titans had this weird thing where it wanted to feel like it would show nudity, but somehow like digitally avoided it by like blurring up,
darkening
areas. Yeah, it was weird. So the Doom Patrol doing that in the first episode was just like, okay, Doom Patrol's not going to pull any punches, just go for it. I was like, okay, cool, it's fine.
Yeah, I guess they're even though it's on the same service, I think they're getting away with it a little more because it's Doom Patrol, right? Compared to Titans, which has maybe a bit more name recognition for most people.
Or it could just be a case of maybe making Titans a mature, or at least pretending it's a mature show was maybe a bad idea.
Yeah.
I actually ended up enjoying a lot more Titans than I thought I would, but it does have a lot of problems.
You liked it a lot more than I did.
It does have a lot of problems, though, and that was definitely one of them. Was great. Oh, we have to be mature and edgy and swear a lot.
I will say I am very happy that the very best part of Titans carries over to this show, and that is the music, because same composer on board.
Yeah, the music's quite good. Although I wasn't really noticing it too much in the first half. It was the second half where it really started to pop for me.
Oh, I was noticing a lot of things in the flashbacks. They were contextual to the time periods. A lot of what they were doing there, which I don't think it stood out as much as towards the end where you got the synthy stuff that was a lot more in keeping with what we had in Titans.
That's what I liked. But yeah, just to go back to the complaint about the swearing and stuff, you kind of diverted me on a new thing there. I just, with Titans, it didn't feel like it fit the characters that were there. And you can argue that the characters, it's a new adaptation, they're doing different versions. I'm like, yeah, fine, whatever. But
it just never felt natural coming out of their mouths. So it
never did. It feels like Titans is a show you should be marketing to be more PG-13 to appeal to a wide array of people. Whereas Doom Patrol is a bit weird. It's a bit more not cliche, a bit more niche is what I meant to say. It's anything but cliche.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I don't think you know what cliche means.
Yeah, no, it's a bit more niche, so it makes more sense for this to be the mature, weird show. And it works as that. The characters are pretty likable, even though most of them, to some extent, I think Larry's the exception, but every other one is a bit of a dick in a different way. Like when we see Rita's backstory, like what she is complaining about in her flashback, we'll talk about it in spoilers, but it's like, man, you're a bitch. What? You're awful. And then Crazy Jane has a bit of an attitude. Certainly some of her personalities have a serious attitude.
Yeah. There's a fantastic line in the narration that sets Larry apart. and I think it was along the lines of, he always thought he was a monster, but he wasn't until until he became the Negative Man.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was this idea of no, he's the only one that wasn't a dickbag.
Yeah, everyone else is a bit of a shithead. Even though they all have hope, they all have redeemable qualities, they all have,
Yeah,
you know,
and they're all likable, even through this,
yeah.
but they're not just out and out good people.
And I think what I like about the show is that it nails this balance of quirky humor, but also this sadness. There's this sadness to it, and I think this fits this is a big part of what makes Doom Patrol kind of work as an idea. Is that it has this sadness of them all losing who they were, and they all feel like misfits. They all feel like they're separate from the world. But I think it's summed up because at one point Larry says to Robot Man, "Oh, a sense of humor will do you good. Work on that sense of humor." And I'm like, yeah, that kind of feels what it is. It's like a bunch of lunatics that are kind of weirdos, but they have just enough heart and humor to make it all work and click together.
Yeah. No, I really like this episode.
I liked it a lot as well.
Just funny is Umbrella Academy launched on Netflix today, and a very similar tone of characters and what it's doing there, and we watched that and we went, yeah, this is really good. And I said, Doom Patrol, we mentioned them launch on the same day was a bit weird, and I said Doom Patrol's got a lot to live up to, and I came out of this preferring this one out of the two first episodes.
I think it's there's positives and negatives to both of them if you're comparing them. I think
Yeah, there is.
Doom Patrol is more confident on a technical level. The direction had more of a distinct style. It felt really tight in what it was doing. I think from a technical perspective, the Umbrella Academy pilot is a better episode. This, I think, made me like the characters more than Umbrella Academy. And I like the characters in Umbrella Academy. That's not a knock on Umbrella Academy. I feel like that by the end of this episode, though, I felt like I was really rooting for them. Like, I was really rooting for them by the last scene.
Yeah, definitely.
And that was, it's funny, actually, because I felt like there was a lot packed out of this episode. It was a full hour long, pretty much.
Flew in, though.
It flew in, but it also felt densely packed. It didn't feel like it was all over that quickly either. It felt like we went through a lot of different things.
Because we had the individual flashbacks for each of them that were mostly relatively significant chunks, right? Like they weren't short, like here's 90 seconds. They were good chunks.
Yeah.
And then you have all the actual present day plot alongside that. There's quite a lot in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the actual plot of the season, if you would call it that, doesn't really get going until the last 20 minutes because it spends a lot of this first episode just setting up who the main characters are.
Just getting them together in the house.
Although 3 of them are there for a long time, like because we go over 25 years of time over the first chunk of this episode. So yeah, no, the first episode's really good. It has a lot of heart. It has the quirky humor, and it really feels. And the thing I like most about Doom Patrol, from what I've read of it, and this episode kind of captures this, is this idea of a team of misfits who really feel like they have no hope of being relevant, but they're going to do it anyway, and they're probably going to save the day because of that. And that has incredible heart to it. They're not this group of they're not the Justice League. They're not this group of good-looking people who all have super god powers. No, all of their powers or all of their abilities or circumstances come with a lot of caveats that are not pleasant.
Yeah, these guys are the epitome of the idea of the superpowers being a curse.
They're well, you could go that route. I would go down the route is that they're basically like Swamp Thing would not be out of place on this team. This idea that they all feel like they've become monsters, but ultimately that monster can be used for good, or even Hulk. Like Hulk's another good example of this. Where
I think Hulk is the first example of it's a curse, not a blessing, right?
Yeah. And mainstream comics, sure. I'm sure there's definitely movie characters and stuff. I'm thinking.
I'm thinking in comics.
Yeah. So we'll give the spoiler warning for episode 1 of Doom Patrol. So full warning from here on. So there's some interesting things. There's some interesting little twisteroos. I like the twist with Robot Man. Like he thinks he was in the accident on the track because he's a race car driver.
Yeah, and we don't question it because that's how it happens in the comic.
Yeah, at least in the version we read in Grant Morrison's run, he did just have unless there's a twist in the second volume.
As far as I know, that was always just the origin.
Yeah, as far as I know
That
as
was
well.
what I was familiar with for a while.
No, but I'm putting it out there because if
Yeah,
people have
yeah.
read more of it, they're going to like so.
No. I'm saying, yeah, even before I read this, that was always what I was familiar with.
Yeah. But the twist is, of course, that no, that wasn't how this accident happened. He survived that. It was fine, and it was actually, after another couple of nights away from his wife, he ended up apologizing to her, and he went and picked his wife and his daughter up, and it was driving them, and the wife died as well. And he's led to believe that the daughter died in the crash as well. But although there's some later on, it's basically confirmed from Calder after Crazy Jane kind of brings it up that. No, the daughter did survive.
Yeah.
And Calder was trying to protect Cliff by not, don't see a daughter who's, at this point would be, like 30 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, should be an adult. So
yeah, maybe probably a bit older because it was 88 when he had the accident, and she was at least
true, yeah,
5 or 6.
True, yeah. So she's probably in her late 30s then.
Yeah.
But so it does that, and that gives you like a gut punch, and that's when I say like, as much as we get like an equal kind of like intro for all the characters, all the main 4 characters, it does always keep coming back to Robot Man. The structure that fits around all these flashbacks is him learning to walk, it's him learning to talk. It's like it's his story.
Yeah, we meet all the other characters through him. It's when he meets them.
And then the narration kind of leads it off into, Alan Tudyk's doing the narration. Alan Tudyk's voicing Mr. Nobody. I say voicing, he's technically also
he's playing.
He's playing them, yeah. And a wonderful effect. You don't see him, of course, until the end of the episode. So Calder's going away for something, and they're not supposed to leave the house. But Crazy Dane's like, "No, let's leave the house."
Yeah,
so,
F this. Let's go have some fun.
So they all go into town, and you're like, "Oh god, it's going to go badly." I love how no one ever seems to question Robot Man. There's never anyone walking past him in the street that goes, "Hey, there's a robot."
There's a few people who look, and I think you see a couple of people maybe take some pictures.
Because people react way more to Negative Man in the bar, I think.
They
do.
do.
Robot Man.
Yeah.
But Rita starts to like melt because she's talking to this waitress, and because she used to be an actress, of course, and about the films, and she's liking hearing a bit of these stories about how she's loved by her and her father. Ultimately, she hears this thing that her father said she went on to do porn, and she gets mortified, and clearly,
so that's what people think of her now.
Yeah, and clearly, like her losing control of her elasticity, is related to her own like.
State of mind.
State of mind, yeah. I don't quite say ego. It's not ego, but like when she gets insecure, when she feels like she's not confident in herself, it goes. And it becomes like a sci-fi movie where she becomes this big blob going down the street. And this is where the first kind of a heroic thing happens, where Cliff like tries to save the school bus, so he rips up the concrete.
Yeah, well, Crazy Jane wants to step in first with whatever power that was.
I didn't recognise what one of the personalities that was, but it's nice to know they're planning on her changing physically, because I'm looking forward to Black Annis.
Yeah, do you know what that one looked like to me? Because you only see it for a quick glimpse. It looked like in the Doom Patrol comic that we just read, there's the 3 assassins,
the planet
with the planet heads, and she looked like the one with the sun head. And I was like, okay, cool. Hope we see more of that at some point.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting. And yeah, this was all delightful, and even little details like Larry like ordering a beer, like the way he phrases it says, "Would you mind if I ordered a drink?" Like expecting the guy to be weirded out and not wanting to serve him, but he does serve him. And he's excited about doing this, but then his negative power starts flaring up.
Starts acting up, yeah. He runs out of there.
Yeah, and there's a little twist here as well for the episode where you find out even though he was happily married, he was actually gay. Which, and keep in mind, this all happened in the 60s, different time period. So he was treated extremely harshly at the time for it.
That's why I was referring to when he said he thought he was a monster. Interesting that this narration coming from Mr. Nobody. Clearly, he's not homophobic. He's a villain, but because he's very obvious. He thought he was a monster, but he wasn't until then.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that a lot of the narration doesn't even sound that villainous. There's the odd little thing maybe, but
yeah. There's just little twinges here or there.
Yeah, it's not until the end where it really goes full thingy. But like so there's some really funny little moments in that. At one point he says something like he's talking about critics and he's like, what do they know? They'll hate this show anyway.
It got really like really early on. It got meta, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I was not
Oh yeah, because
expecting this vibe.
yeah, one of the first lines of I think he says is like oh, another superhero TV show. Yeah, that's what everyone wants. It was something to that effect.
Yeah, yeah,
That was like one of the first things he said, and it was like, oh, okay.
yeah. It's like, okay, you're immediately setting the tone for me.
Yeah. So yeah, Mr. Nobody at the end, the effect's really interesting. It's actually a lot like his comic book version, just with some extra elements in the face.
Yeah, you get just to see Turek a little bit.
Yeah, you see his mouth a little bit. It's kind of CG looking. It's not perfect, but it kind of works on him because he's meant to be this abstract kind of entity. I like when he clapped his hands together. It was just like 2D black, like
Yeah, I
hands.
kind of really like like you said, it kind of feels cheap in a way, but it feels really in keeping with that character's design.
Yeah, no, it works for him because he's meant to feel kind of weird. So I say kind of weird, really weird. So the heart of the episode though, is that once this happens and Calder comes back and everyone in town's like, oh, there was this weird blob attack today and all this happened. He's pissed. He's like, no, like there's consequences to this and something's coming for us now. He sees this deer in the street and he's looking at photos and there's this
More of a
deer.
donkey.
Was it a donkey?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. But he's looking through all these photos and there's this donkey's appearing in all these different places, and he's like, "There's something's coming. We have to leave." And Cliff's like, "But like, if this thing's coming to the town, then like, is the town screwed then?" And it's like, "Shouldn't we stay and try and help?" And it's like, Cliff was already kind of likable, but this is the moment of like, no,
he's the one that steps up.
Yeah, he's the noble one who wants to protect the town, and the other characters all kind of give in. Crazy Jane's the sort of the most reluctant. And she's the one that ends up convincing everyone to like get off the bus and say, "Let's turn around and go and help Cliff. We shouldn't let him do this alone." I kind of like how Larry doesn't actually say anything.
Rita just goes. Larry says yes.
It's because do you know what I like about it? It's not so much that she's forcing him; it's that she knows from his grunt that he's like thinking about it that he wants to do it, but he doesn't like that he wants to do it. So
yeah.
she's just reading his body language and
they've known each other for decades.
Yeah. So they come back, and the synth music at this point was great. See when they were getting off the bus and all walking the line, like I was, oh man, I'm so into this. Like I'm really rooting for this team all of a sudden. Like I'm really into it. And Mr. Nobody claps his hands and makes this vortex open up in the ground, which is how we end the episode.
Yeah, you just click at what the hell's that?
Yeah. And that's how we wrap it up. And obviously some details I've glossed over here as we've been going. As we said, Rita was kind of awful. We see her in our movie set. She's distracted by someone who's only got one arm. The pull focus is only got one arm, and if you don't know what that is for anyone at home, just in case you're probably thinking, what's a focus pull? Basically, you obviously on a camera you've got focus. Because camera movements on a movie or a TV show are so intricate, usually you have someone whose job it is just to adjust the focus. As the camera's operating, and they'll have markers and stuff, but that'll be just their job. So he does that, and there's a great irony to that for her character because she is awful to someone because they're different, and then she becomes very different, and it's kind of it almost felt Twilight Zone-esque because it was just desserts. It was someone getting comeuppance for who they were.
Yeah, I thought it was really weird when she falls through the bridge into the water, and you have like the director or whoever it was, and there's two of them, run up. And they just look down and go, look back. Come on, then, come and help her. And then they all run up, and they all just kind of stand there. And it's the guy who's in the shot, who's on the boat, who's like, "Oh, fine, I'll go in and get her."
No one's wanted to.
They take ages. Like no one wants to go in this water and get.
I'm expecting that we'll maybe explore more of like the energy that hit her, and also obviously the negative energy that hit Larry down the line. Right now, they're kind of just mysterious, but I'm expecting that to be a thing.
I really like the way all the flashbacks, the time periods were shot. They all look different and distinct.
Yeah, because she was from the 50s, Rita that is, and then Larry was the 60s. Obviously, Cliff was the end of the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, Crazy Jane, you mentioned she was around at the mansion in the 70s, which is weird because she was missing for a long time then, if Cliff's been here for decades. And
Yeah. They mention that she comes and goes, like she always has done. So yeah, who knows?
I like all four of the main characters, and by the end of the episode, like I say, I was really rooting for them. I was really like, this band of misfits deserves to win, right? Like I want them to win.
Yeah.
And obviously we're just getting started here, and we'll see where this wraps up. It did say special guest appearance by Timothy Dalton, so I'm wondering if he actually disappears for a while, like if Mr. Nobody takes
Maybe.
him.
It was inside the actual opening credits, though. It wasn't just, like
yeah.
along the bottom where it said that. So it might be one of those where it's relatively regular.
Yeah, it makes me wonder though if they maybe don't plan for him to be back for season 2.
Possibly. Well, we should mention, obviously, because he's the only one that was recast between the Titans episode and this. Timothy Dalton's just better in every way, isn't he?
Oh, of course he is. Yeah.
Obviously you haven't got that weird accent going on, and it's a lot more nuanced because I think in Titans, Calder was very overtly sinister, whereas here there is that veiled sinister level. But Timothy Dalton's pretty good at that, but he's got that charm on top of it.
Yeah.
I think that was missing in the Titans episode, because he's got the charisma here to go, yeah, this is why these people stay here, why they kind of trust me with their lives. I didn't really buy that in Titans.
Yeah, no. Dalton's good. I like all the cast, actually, all the main cast I like.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously, Crazy Jane's got a tough job. The actress has to do a lot of different sort of personas.
Yeah. So far, so good. We'll wait and see how it plays out. Because I said before this started that she's got the most challenging job, and you've got to have someone who's a really good actress to pull this off with that many personalities. So far, the 2 or 3 we've seen have all been good. There's been nothing stand out yet, but I mean, she probably gets the least amount of time, and by the nature of her showing up relatively late in the episode. Yeah,
she doesn't get any flashbacks like the others do. She just, I mean, she gets a decent introduction in the sense that we have her big scene where she, kind of switches with Cliff. There's a little visual thing they've added for when she changes personality.
A little shimmer over her face.
Which I get. I like it in the sense of that we always know she's changed.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe they would have wanted to try and trick us here or there, like which one is it? But I think for some of them, because I don't think say Jane and the Hangman's daughter are necessarily distinguishable immediately.
No, I agree, and also they can still play that of when she comes out of when she's off camera and she comes in to the shot, and it's like, okay, which one are we dealing with?
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I am feeling really positive with this. Outside of some of the effects, feeling a bit cheap.
Yeah, but I'm willing to let them slide. We'll mention them if they're particularly bad. In the future.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm mentioning it because I think it's worth mentioning, not because I think it drags it down, or because I think it's a major complaint.
No, of course. I agree with you. But I think it won't be something we mention every episode if they're just at this level.
It's
just if there's one that's particularly bad, we'll mention that, I think.
Yeah. Because one of the little details I liked as well at the end when they're walking in line towards the potential enemy is that Rita's leg goes, right? Her leg starts to melt, kind of like it has done.
Yeah.
And they just kind of look at her, just kind of and it's not like a case of, oh, we'll stop and try and make her go back to normal. It's just no, it's fine. Just keep going.
Just keep going.
You're one of us. We're weirdos. Let's do this. Yeah. And she kind of smiles and goes, all right. And then they just keep going again. And for me, that kind of sums up the point of this group and the point of this show. So, weirdos can save the world. Weirdos are people too. There you go. That's your log line.
It's real good though.
For the thing, yeah. No, I really liked the first episode. I am looking forward to more. So
yeah, me too.
That's not Titan. Sorry, that's Doom Patrol.
How dare you?
What can I say? Doom Patrol episode 1. So yeah, by all means, let us know what you think of the episode in the comments below. It's worth mentioning that we'll be reviewing more of this. We'll review all the episodes of this, but we'll be doing that as part of Television from the Multiverse podcast, which goes out. It does mean there'll be a bit of a gap between this one and episode 2 because we record that show on Thursdays. So the next episode of TV Multiverse will be next Friday with this edited into it. And then episode 2 will be in the following week's episode. So it does mean there's 6 days after each new episode before you get the new review. It's just because that happens to be the thing that's closest to the time we record, or right after we record, most likely.
Yeah. Week's got to end somewhere.
It does. That said, there's a good chance it'll be moving back to Sunday at some point in a couple of months. Well, that's 3 months. But, so it may actually flip, and then the DC Universe show will be the newest thing that'll be on the show.
Yeah.
So it could change. But So you can get the future reviews on television for the Multiverse, which of course has its own audio feed, and of course is on the YouTube page. But if you want to support our show and everything we do here, you can head over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and you can support us for as little as $1 per month. You can of course also like, subscribe, all that stuff. All that does help. You can even buy some merchandise over on the stores. There's both a US and a UK store. You can find links to that in the description. Probably worth mentioning, just in case that this is the first thing you've ever seen from us. We also do a couple of comic book podcasts. We have Comics from the Multiverse, which is a weekly show with myself and Connor, but also Matt, and we talk about DC Comics every week, the new books that are released. And then we have a companion show to that called Elsewhere in the Multiverse, which is me and Connor talking about Marvel books and sort of other, just other books like Image, Dark Horse, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and obviously a few times during this we mentioned that we just read, the Doom Patrol by Grant Morrison, that book one. If you are interested in hearing us on that, that's on the Patreon. That's exclusive to the Patreons at $5 or up. It's part of their monthly episode that they get.
Yeah, it's a monthly episode we do for patrons. So, but that's us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. It's funny, I was actually thinking in my head there, what outro am I doing for this? Because technically this is a separate thing, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. Thank you once again for watching. Keep watching superhero TV shows, and always remember that sometimes we screw things up for the better.